Again, I'm David DiCerto of the Sheen Center, and it is my distinct honor to welcome our two special guests. They are the award-winning creators of such hit TV shows as The Good Wife and The Good Fight. Please join me in warmly welcoming to our Sheen Center stage, Robert and Michelle King. How are you doing tonight?
So well, thank you.
Good.
Great, great. So, well, you know, I have to say, I see this show everywhere, right? It's on buses and subways, and I saw that we were talking about the New York Times article. You are now the new super producers, so I don't know if I should refer to you that way, but...
We do to each other. We say it all the time.
There you go. There you go. I was thinking, obviously, The Good Wife and The Good Fight take place kind of in the political arena. I hope you weren't so depressed by the political arena that you sought refuge in the demonic possession as a lighter fare. Before we talk about the show itself, I thought we'd talk just a little bit about your somewhat unique writing situation, the fact that you're a married couple, creating and writing content for network TV. So could you talk a little bit just about how that works in your process?
Well, I'll start by saying I have no idea how anyone does it without their spouse. Truly, I mean, there's enough work that you really need two brains to focus on it.
We've been doing it together about 20 years, and 11 of those years maybe successfully. And I think the difficulties when you get into the idea of producing it, there's casting, there's the music, there's production design, costume. So there's always this need to believe that the other person has your back, and when they make a decision, you're not going to be, betrayed by the other person's opinion crossing them. So I think we always tend to agree, and then if we don't, we just shut up about it.
And what I've learned being married for 20 years is if we don't disagree, she's always right. So, I read in several interviews that the concept, the inspiration for this series really kind of came naturally out of the conversations that you've been having for decades. And you're kind of like playing, I heard you backstage, you're actually talking to one of the interviews backstage, that you were continuing the debates you were having in this narrative. Obviously, you have both publicly said in your interviews that you identify as a practicing Catholic. You are a skeptic. You said you identify, I think, as an agnostic Jewish person, you said. So can you talk a little bit about how that inspired this film? Why this series?
Why the series is, you're always looking, when you're looking for a series, what is the future of it? What is how is it not just one episode or a movie or whatever? And you're always looking for a debate that can offer a skeleton, and you put a lot of meat on that skeleton over the course of, over The Good Wife, it was 7 years, oh my goodness. So here it was like, one of the more interesting subjects for us is, why do people do bad things? Why do, we don't even have to go to the big evil of schoolyard shootings. You can go to the small evil of the horrible boss who throws things, who screams. Where does that come from? Obviously, I go to original sin, and that's always offered an interesting contrast, because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I would go to a psychological exploration.
Yeah, it's like G.K. Chesterton said, the one theological concept you can prove just by reading the newspaper is original sin. Just look through it.
And that becomes more true with every day. I mean, I think social media has a way of magnifying everything. And so what's fascinating to us, we were exploring some of that in The Good Wife, but we wanted to explore it on this area that is even of deeper debate. I mean, it's always interesting. Michelle always had a view of our show, which is, what are the things said, the impolite things to be argued over. And I think this is one of those impolite things, and that's what.
And, the fact that you have these different points of view, I would think that from a writing standpoint, that makes the writing richer, because you both bring these points of view. And I'm sure there are certain challenges in trying to figure things out, but I think that it also enriches at least the writing process.
Well, it starts as a conversation between the two of us, and then there are 7 other writers on the staff, who are all very, very smart, and many of them steeped in religion or the supernatural. So that also enriches the conversation.
Sure. Well,
And our tech advisors too bring something to the table too.
well, there's the perfect segue. You set that up. We have one of your tech advisors here tonight, so this might be the time to bring him out. He's a friend of the Sheen Center. He had been the pastor of Old St. Pat's Cathedral, now Basilica, down the block. Let's bring out Monsignor Donald Sicano. Thank you for joining us. Monsignor, thank you for being with us.
Delightful.
Now, I understand that you served in some sort of consultative role on the show. Could you talk a little bit about how that happened and what your experience has been?
Well, I got a call one day out of the blue and asked me if I would be interested in being in consultation to a TV series called Evil, and I piqued my interest immediately. That's why you're all here. It definitely piqued your interest, since we sense evil, and I've been a preacher of the gospel, of talking about the Lord and his struggle with evil. So I said, send me a script, and in reading, I was delighted to read a real thorough manifestation of the ongoing conversation that we have in our culture. Well, you know, why do bad things happen to good people, and why do good things happen to bad people? You know, so I was really intrigued by the script, and came and spent 2 fascinating days on a set observing an exorcism.
Now, in the series, Kristen is the skeptic. She's a forensic psychologist. So do you also have consultants from the skeptic scientific perspective?
We have a forensic psychologist, Dr. Chitra Raghavan, who's consulted with us and tried to keep us honest in that regard.
You know, I think what is explored in a fuller sense in this series, there were germs of that even in The Good Wife. I mean, I think about, you know, the episode, you know, Are You There, God, where, you know, Alicia's character was a non-believer, an atheist, but her daughter Grace was a very strong believer. And I think both of them were always treated with respect and intelligence, and I guess, you know, that comes out of your relationship, where you may disagree about things, but you probably have that bedrock respect for each other. And I think that certainly comes out here. And I think that's rare in a film or a TV series where you get both points of view and both are treated with seriousness and intelligence. Was that intentional going into this?
Very much so. Well, first of all, thank you. But very much so, it was probably the most important thing to me, that we have characters that listen to each other and respected each other. Because there's an awful lot of disagreement right now, and I don't think there's a lot of listening going on.
Yeah.
And I think what we are always looking for is, where is the comedy in it too? I think the Alicia thing was a perfect example. It was a liberal mother who has tolerance for everything except her daughter and becoming a conservative Christian. It was like, okay, that's where I draw the line. So I think you were looking for the same thing here. Where's the you know, how is it not a dry drama or something preachy? And I do think the more it becomes like a George Bernard Shaw kind of debate, where both sides are treated with respect, the better for that. Because then it doesn't feel like the writer's trying to shove something down your throat.
You know, I was thinking, watching the episode, I was thinking of, there was a book that Pope Benedict had written before he was elected Pope, and it was an introduction to Christianity, but he has this wonderful line in the introduction where he says, there's a touch of skeptic in every believer and a touch of skepticism, a touch of faith in every skeptic. And I think that really comes out in this show. And I'd like to talk, because I love the tagline, you know, not every mystery can be explained. And I think, in addition to, again, what I commend you for, to not position faith and science as in an antagonistic role, but they're sort of complementary ways of trying to reach the truth. There's a beautiful line in John Paul II's encyclical, Faith and Reason. It's the very first line. He says that faith and reason are 2 wings on which the Spirit flies up to contemplate the truth. And I think that's really comes out in this. But can you talk about the idea of mystery? You know, whether you're a believer or whether you're, you know, a skeptic, I think mystery is something that everyone can appreciate, that idea that you just can't explain everything. And I think mystery is so lacking in the modern world, and particularly in a lot of pop culture. Can you talk about how mystery really is at the heart of your series?
Well, for us, it was about pointing out the mystery in science, too. Because Ben, who's the most atheistic, that's the one played by Asif Manvi, believes in science above all, but when faced with quantum entanglement, which he will be in a future episode, faces the mystery at the center of science. If you can't pass the speed of light, how is quantum entanglement even a possibility? So the bottom line is, even the most scientific, what we wanted the show to be is some of the biggest scares were in the scientific realm, not in the supernatural realm. So you're never sure where the scare was going to come from, was the supernatural or scientific. And I think what's interesting us is showing that science has its own mysteries that are unfathomable, that you keep trying to dig to the bottom of. You really can't get to the bottom of why quantum physics works. I mean, I don't think we will either, because it is a mystery there.
Sure, every question really leads to another, every answer to a question leads to 10 other questions.
Right.
You know, and the supernatural and the mysterious simmers in the culture. It keeps on popping up, you know, in music. It's sort of you know, we stare into the abyss of the Big Bang Theory. You know, what the science brings us to the brink of certain, you know, point, and then you look into the beyond and wonder, you know, what that is.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because your previous two series, you know, dealt again in the arena of politics, where everything was about, you know, the evidence or the facts, or, you know, the empirical, where the plot lines were driven by empirical knowledge. What was it like to pivot from that world, you know, just narratively, dramatically, into a world that was open to the supernatural, or even if it's not the supernatural, that sense of wonder even within the scientific realm?
We have 7 writers. Do you want to talk about the writers? 7 writers who are, well, you said, for example, with Good Wife, we always needed to follow the rules, right?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you're constrained by the legal code, as opposed to here, there is a lot more freedom to explore.
And I think what was interesting to us is being able to use more visual effects. We're trying to, in the second episode, it's about miracles, but part of the miracle is our hero, Mike Coulter's character, David, having a vision. It's a chemically induced vision, but a vision that we tried to pull from Dante, which was a combination of science and a view of heaven. And so what it was challenging to visually represent it. So you're not in silly boardrooms or courtrooms, and you're not in depositions, and that stuff can be kind of boring. It's trying to find a way to suggest what is ethereal. And even her mountain climbing will figure into that as we see more of what that background is. It's trying to reach some area of beauty. And I don't think law shows give you much beauty. But in theory, what we're trying for here, maybe not in the first episode because it's about a serial killer, but in the future episodes, we're trying to go to something we hope is deeper.
Yeah, well, it really is an interesting, it's a hybrid of genres. I mean, obviously there is a procedural aspect to it, but it has its thriller aspects, its horror elements, but it does have that underneath it all, there's that foundational philosophical, theological heft to it.
And I would say one thing that I don't know if it's as clear in the pilot as it will be, is that parenting is very interesting to us. Not just in The Good Wife, which was Juliana Margulies' character towards her 2 kids, but here with Katja's 4 kids, who are like the Marx Brothers. They just are running around chaotic. But this idea of innocence and how to protect innocence is, I think, crucial to this show.
And what's interesting, a major difference is that in The Good Fight or The Good Wife, characters didn't have the luxury of thinking about goodness, because their clients might be good, they might not be good, and you still have to defend them. Here, the characters have the luxury to discuss goodness.
Yes, Yeah, the other two shows have a timeliness about them. They were dealing with like a rip from the headlines type of plots. This one is almost timeless. Those big questions about good and evil. Monsignor, could you talk a little bit about when you bring a priest or any other expert on a film set, television set, what types of questions were they? What were they interested in finding out from a Catholic priest?
Well, I think the actor that played Father O'Mara, who you'll see in, I guess he appears in the 5th episode.
I think he's in the 4th and the 5th
Fourth and
episode.
the 5th episode. I think the
No,
actor,
you're right, the 5th episode.
Clark Johnson.
Yeah, Clark Johnson really used me to get into his role. There were some techniques, making the sign of the cross, the use of holy water, but most especially, I think I was a way for him to absorb the priestliness in confronting this demonic possessed person. And what I encouraged him to do was to be bold in his confrontation with evil, because he carries victory with him. The war has been won, so to speak, but the battles Satan keeps on struggling for some victory. But he, as the priest representing the victorious God, must be confident that he is going to defeat this demon that's possessed in this person.
And the other thing you might say in the writer's room, all the questions the writers had.
That was great. I spent 2 hours with the writers. It was glorious because they were so eager. They were just soaking it in. The framework for this evil, but always in the framework of goodness. So really, goodness does prevail in the belief system in Christianity, but it's like the soldier in a war that has heard that there's an armistice but continues to fight, and that's what's happening here with this.
But the other thing was also wanting to know how Mike Coulter, where he would be in his move towards becoming a priest.
Yes.
And because, he's out there running around in T-shirts.
That's right. That's
But
right.
so
right.
what does a seminarian really do?
That's right.
Yeah. And
Yeah. So he's termed a priest in training. That's the nomenclature that they use for him.
term of art.
That's right.
It's called.
That's right.
Was there ever any thoughts about making that character a priest, or was it you?
No, because
pretty much right from the start, it felt more interesting. In part because there'd been more priests on TV. You want to do something a little bit more fresh.
Sure.
and you're always looking for ways to have peaks in a series. So, or being ordained would be one of those peaks in the future. You know what I mean?
It makes him a little more vulnerable. I mean, he even had a question to me in terms of the flirtation, with the psychologist, that kind of aspect. So he's still in a period of discernment as a priest in training. So that's a theme.
Discernment makes great drama. There you go.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Speaking about, you referenced some of the elements of the priestly character. There's always been this fascination with evil in cinema and on television. I mean, you could just think about, obviously, The Exorcist comes to mind, and the recent Conjuring series.
Or pop culture.
In pop culture, but particularly in film and TV. And I forgot where I read it, but I forgot which one of you said it, but you said you didn't want this to be the exorcism of the week, that they're going to explore other things. Mm-hmm. But there is that fascination. I was wondering, why do you think that is? And B, are you a fan of those types of that genre? And were you inspired at all by any of those well-known works?
I love scares. I really haven't loved the Exorcism of the Week shows because I thought there was a predictability to them. And also, when the rules are broken that much, it's just like, well, if a head can turn around 3 times, if we turn it around 8 times, is it really going to make that much of a difference? And also, I think it's so separates itself from life in so many ways that it's sometimes hard to identify. So I think we just wanted to do something that was more about the mysteries. I mean, we have one episode that is about miracles. We have another episode about relics, the reality of relics. The other is about prophecy. So, I mean, it's not all about, but then on the other hand, you see, the return of Nazism, and you go, oh my God, what is happening? Where is this evil coming from? And why does it seem to be moving from one person to another, almost like an infection?
Yes.
That's a really interesting concept of the metaphor of infection with social media. I mean, it really is.
And even in everyday life, I think that people are experiencing the presence of the demonic. We curse people. We say things like "damn you," So that's really flirting with the concept that there can be a damnation of a person. So we curse people. And we also bless people.
But you asked, why are people fascinated? I do think there's a feeling that so much of life has been protected from them, like child protective bumpers on every corner. So part of it is this fascination with the dangerous and the thing they cannot explain. And the other is probably the concern about death. I mean, what does happen after you die? And that becomes the fascination too.
Yeah. There's the great line from Usual Suspects about the greatest trick the devil ever played is convincing people he doesn't exist. And it reminded me of C.S. Lewis's wonderful Screw Tape Letters, and where he's giving advice to his apprentice devil, and he says, that we've got a dilemma here, because if the world takes us seriously, they're going to take the enemy seriously, which in that case is God. So he's trying to decide, and he advises his apprentice, when you want people to think about the devil, just encourage them to have images of, the red cape and the pointy horns, because they won't take it seriously. Because then if they take us seriously, they're going to have to take the other concept seriously as well. But I love the series also talks just about the characters struggling too. It's not just evil as in the bad characters. There's the struggles that they all have. I think it was the great Russian novelist Solzhenitsyn said that the line between good and evil runs through every heart. So that's there.
And I would say the Michael Emerson characters was really influenced by Screw Tape. The idea of the idea of temptation being conducted like a business, and a discussion among kind of businessmen about how they're going to put out the best car this year or something. That was it, and then translate it to the email years, the texting years, Snapchat. So Michael Emerson's character is basically a very modern version of that.
That's it. Yeah, it's a nice tease in this first episode. It's really interesting to see where that goes. Talking about Screw Tape Letters, I believe it was Nietzsche famously said to be careful when you stare into the abyss. Sometimes the abyss will stare back at you. And C.S. Lewis said when he was writing the Screw Tape Letters, it wasn't a pleasant experience because he was trying to literally, imaginatively get into the head of the devil. So in writing this series about evil, whether you see it as a spiritual person or whether you just see it as a sort of a psychological reality, was writing this series about, and I understand not every episode deals with evil, but what kind of an experience was it writing a series about evil?
It has not been staring into the abyss at all. I mean, it's staring into deadlines at the very least.
Well, I guess that's an abyss of sorts.
I should say this, it's enjoyable to write bad guys. It is. I mean, C.S. Lewis is a much better person. It hurt him. But we live. Good Wife was, every episode had a fun bad guy that we wanted to do. And Michael Emerson, you're always wanting to challenge him because he's such a good actor to do something dark and creepy with your words. I think it's a way to fend it off, to write that, is to fend it off. So,
yeah. What was? I'm curious. It's a series that, as I said, deals with subject of the supernatural, with religion, takes it seriously, takes faith seriously in a very intelligent way. The characters are three-dimensional. What was, when you pitched this idea to CBS, was there a hesitancy about dealing with a show of this topic?
It was shocking. They embraced it from the moment they heard it. We did not get any pushback. You would anticipate that. None.
Michelle
They-
and I, the year before, had done a show called Vatican City, which was about the first female papal spokesperson, which was supposed to be like West Wing, the series, but in the Vatican. And we did a lot of research from it, and it turned into 2 very good scripts, and no one wanted to even look at it or sniff at it. So, it makes you say, we love the subject. What is a way that we can make what we wanted to do even more acceptable for an entertainment division? And I think one of it is to stick with a genre like scares and so on. So, we were hurt by that because it was a very exciting research trip. We went to the Vatican. We did all this exciting stuff. And then it just died a dog's death, so you'd move on to the next.
Oh. Well, you do move on, and you've moved on to evil. And what has, what has been your experience in this journey, in the sense that we had a screenwriter here last night who was talking about how you can't write a script and not be affected by it. It changes you in some regard. Has writing this series, or at least in the early goings, affected your ideas about good and evil, your own particular...
Actually, no.
was gonna say,
I know
I'm
we're probably a little more superficial than your screenwriter friend.
Or older.
You know what? Maybe one of the things is TV moves so fast, and as Michelle said, you're just hitting deadline after deadline, that you're not really reflective. You're not reflecting on anything. I have a feeling when the experience of a year is over, you might take a moment. We read a lot, so probably it will come about in our reading after the season's over, but I don't think anything's changed during this season.
Well, they may be just instruments in God's plan, because I think this series is going to provoke a lot of conversation and introspection into what people are experiencing every day. Yeah. Right? Things that science cannot explain or has failed, actually, in doing, making people happy. So psychotherapy and pharmaceuticals can just go so far and have disappointed people, and law can just go so far in terms of creating structures in society that prevent people from harming one another. But does it really create an environment of wellness and happiness and prevent people from doing bad things? Obviously, no. So I think the series is going to be a teaching tool, and I said that to the Kings earlier, for discussion in church groups.
Well, maybe I'll end the questions with just a general question, whoever wants to answer it. Just the idea, if you've hit on something, about just the power of story. And, you could have an academic discussion about, the nature of evil, and it wouldn't reach the same audience. It wouldn't have the same effect that stories do. I guess, Father, could you talk a little bit about how stories can talk about these big issues? And then if the two of you could just maybe share some thoughts about, as storytellers, what you see the role of even popular culture is in engaging viewers in those sort of bigger questions, bigger conversations.
Well, the power of the Bible. The Bible, is storytelling par excellence. Starting with the garden story, and here the human is given everything that they need to be happy, and yet, since they've been given free will, there's this sense of self-empowerment. I can do better than what God can do for me. So that begins this drama, this narrative that weaves itself throughout the scriptures. And then, Jesus emerges from a desert, and Mark, in the first chapter of the earliest gospel we have, the demons confront Jesus, and they know who he is. You're here to destroy us. So these stories are very, very powerful, and we're still telling them every Sunday.
I've always thought, some of the most perceptive and reverent writing was Flannery O'Connor. And a good man is hard to find. has a serial killer there who takes a family off and drags them into the woods and shoots them all in the head. And it's just the discussion between this killer and the grandmother kind of goes to the core of faith, but you need all the awful events the story describes and describes comically.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything that would never be taught in any Sunday school anywhere, but you are thrilled by the writing, you're thrilled by the challenge of the storytelling, and yet there's this reverence at the core that there's this famous letter she wrote to an English teacher who was trying to tear the story apart and describe it as the father's dream. And she said, "Are you insane? The story means what it says." And I think that's what sometimes people of faith don't understand is entertainment seems dysfunctional in some way, and it needs to be straightened out as a lesson. And it's just the lesson sometimes is something perverse that you can't get your finger and your arms quite around it. And I think that's what we want to try to do is maybe at the end of an episode you'll be disturbed and you're not quite sure what the show was trying to tell you. And maybe that's part of the point with what the show was trying to tell you. But anyway, that I guess is it. For me, storytelling is that unfathomable mystery that is at the core of my faith.
And I was going to say, if we have any obligation, I think it's just to avoid the cliches, because there have been so many, and I would say particularly about the church. And so this is an opportunity to go a different direction with that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you certainly, as I said, look through any newspaper. You certainly have enough material to keep it for going for many, many seasons. We do have one bonus treat for you. We have a little promo that shows gives a little flavor of some of the upcoming episodes. So let's run that now.
The distance between the stars.
Well, of course. What was I thinking?
Do you think science is going to answer every question?
I'm a forensic psychologist, but I don't need to check every broomstick to know that broomsticks don't fly.
I work for the Catholic Church. I want to hire you to help investigate unexplained phenomena.
You don't care that I don't believe?
I do not. I got an assignment. A miracle.
I was dead. Now I'm not. Everything has changed for me.
It's starting to sound like a ghost story.
This work is never boring, is it?
Nope. So, this is a haunting?
It's an infestation.
What's that?
A haunting.
You know I'm just doing this to pay off my student loans, right?
Evil premieres CBS Thursday, September 26th.
Well, again, Evil premieres Thursday, September 26th at 10 o'clock. Just want to thank you both for your ministry of storytelling, and Monsignor Sicano, thank you for your ministry as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks again. Come back. Yeah, me too.
After you.
I'll be right there.
Sure.
Want to just take this?
Yes.